freezes me. Most faces are. You won't even remember.
Call of Duty Zombies is my favorite game of all time, and is a chapter I've wanted to see come to Dead by Daylight since I started playing the game. I've always thought it would be a very good fit and would be a great addition to the Entities realm, and lore-wise, it just makes perfect sense. The whole storyline of COD Zombies is a cycle. The events take place over and over again, beginning with the Great War and ending with the map Revelations in Black Ops 3, where the crew gets sent back in time to the Great War. Now, just with that alone, it would fit very well into the realm of the Entity, as that's basically what the trials are. Not necessarily a time loop, but it is never-ending trials against the Killers of the Fog, where regardless of if you escape or die, you end up right back at that campfire. The survivor for this chapter would be none other than Edward Richtofen, the mad Nazi scientist, and the killer would be the Warden from Alcatraz. Now, if you're not into zombies like I am, what I'm about to say to you is gonna sound crazy and confusing, but just trust me, it all makes sense if you're into it. See, after the Primus crew picked up the soul of Ultimus Takio and Zetsubo no Shima, they end up taking a detour to a little pocket dimension that Alcatraz prison is trapped within. They go here to get some blood vials from 4 mobsters so that by the end of Revelations they won't disappear, and this is what causes the cycle to reset itself and how they end up traveling back to the Great War. But while that cycle repeats many times over, there's another cycle going on within that pocket dimension of Alcatraz. The 4 mobsters, Al, Finn, Sal, and Billy, are trapped within purgatory, doomed to spend eternity fighting against waves of the undead to pay for their sins. These 4 mobsters were sent to Alcatraz to pay for their crimes, when eventually they set out to escape from the rock. Al Arlington devised a plan in which they would build a makeshift plane and escape from the roof of the prison. But when the night came to escape from the island, Al could not keep up with his promises of getting out, so Sal, Finn, and Billy took their revenge by murdering the weasel on that roof.
And so it was here, beneath the dark and stormy winter skies, that the hapless Arlington met his grisly end, bleeding to death on the cold concrete roof.
Once word had gotten around to the guards, the remaining 3 were sentenced to die by electric chair.
For their participation in the murder, the 3 collaborators were sent to death by electric chair.
Now this is where the story of the devil-worshipping Warden comes in. While all of that was going on between the mobsters, the Warden of Alcatraz was being spoken to by what he called the Dark One, which we know as the Shadow Man. Basically, the Shadow Man was making promises to the Warden of a paradise that would come to fruition if the Warden did his bidding. He told the Warden of a man named Edward Richtofen, whose blood contained great power that he would need to extract in order to exact his plans.
Waiting for Dr. Edward Richtofen to walk into the trap.
What would you have of him?
His blood holds great power. You will harness it all and open the way to the paradise below.
But to do this, he would need to prepare, so the Shadow Man would then tell the Warden of the 4 mobsters and how their blood must spill so that they could be eternally punished. Not only this, but that the Warden himself must be sacrificed. And all of this must be done to trap Richtofen.
Salvatore DeLuca, Finn O'Leary, Billy Handsome, Al Arlington.
Salvatore, Finn, Billy, Al. Yes, my lord, I know these names.
Their sins shall be their undoing. Their eternal punishment through your sacrifice will ensnare another.
And as soon as the Shadow Man tells the Warden of this plan, one of the guards informs him of the murder of Al Arlington up on the roof.
I'm real sorry to interrupt your prayers, sir, but there's been a murder up on the roof. It's Al Arlington.
The 3 are then sentenced to the electric chair, and soon after the Warden kills himself in his own makeshift electric chair he constructed in his own home. And that is how the cycle of Alcatraz begins. The 4 mobsters are then doomed to eternal damnation, stuck repeating the same escape sequence a seemingly infinite amount of times, always ending with them dying in one way or another and returning right back to the beginning to do it all over again. However, they weren't the only ones trapped. The Warden himself was trapped with them, doomed to suffer the same fate. He would go after them, trying to kill them and getting killed by them an endless amount of times. If you remember from what I said before, The premise crew with Richtofen eventually comes to the island to retrieve those blood vials of the mobsters, but in every loop of the cycle, they don't stay for long and usually move on pretty quickly. However, after an eternity of loops, in one instance, Al Arlington ends up killing the other 3 mobsters and breaks the cycle, causing the time loop to end and for their souls to be trapped in Alcatraz. So then when our version of the premise crew gets to Alcatraz, there are some changes. At first, Richtofen notices that they're transported to the middle of the prison when they should be closer to the laboratory.
They should be closer to the lab. No matter.
This way,
If you please.
And when they get to the lab, another version of Richtofen is already there, seemingly angry after reading the Chronorium. And just as a side note, the Chronorium is a future-telling book that lays out the events of the entire cycle. The other Richtofen then hands our Richtofen the Chronorium and tells him to read it again, and he notices that the pages have changed.
You'll be needing this. The Chronorium. But I've already read it. Read it again. What is the meaning of this? The pages have changed. They... Our blood. My blood. You cannot possibly expect me to let this happen. You son of a bitch!
This is all due to the cycle being broken by Al Arlington on the Golden Gate Bridge. The events have changed, so the future has changed. Richtofen is extremely angry and does not want to go through with the new plans within the pages of the Chronorium. They then attempt to leave the island, but just before they can, the warden comes out of his office and closes the portal right in front of them, trapping them on the rock.
I will be reborn!
My God. What have I done?
The warden eventually captures them, but the soul of Al sets them free. They then make their way back to the lab, where the dark mechanism is awaiting them. Richtofen realizes his blood is the key to their escape and traps himself within it so that it may drain his blood and set everybody free. This is when Great War Richtofen, who was supposedly in a stasis chamber this whole time, awakens. He then defeats the warden and the souls are finally set free. He gives Nikolai the Chronorium and tells him he must keep his soul to defeat Dr. Monty. And this is the point where the entity would swoop in and take Richtofen into the realm. That final cutscene with Richtofen dying usually makes me cry. I grew up with these characters and this story means a lot to me, but just before Richtofen fully bleeds to death, the entity comes in to save him by bringing him into the fog. The warden would also be taken here just before his death. My headcanon for this is that while the Shadow Man was telling the warden what to do, the entity was also there watching and listening in the background, waiting for these events to take place so it could take them into the realm. The entity would convince the warden that he could be reborn again, and serve as his pawn, exacting justice to the survivors who have sinned. And Richtofen would be doomed for eternity, escaping and dying at the hands of the killers of the fog. Now, the power for the warden would be pretty simple. He would have a similar lockdown ability just like he does in the games, where he can lock down pretty much every interactable. However the survivors deal with that, I'm not sure. In the games, the player spends points to unlock them, but obviously that doesn't really translate super well to Dead by Daylight. I also think it would be cool to somehow make the 3 Hellhounds interactable for the survivors so that they could unlock the Hell's Retriever to use against the warden. He could also have some kind of smoke bomb ability, because in the games when you knock his helmet off, a smoke bomb goes off. However, beyond that, his power is up to interpretation. I'd like to see any other ideas for his power, so comment what you might think. I think giving Richtofen perks based on the COD Zombies perks would be awesome. They could give him Juggernog that makes him stronger in some way, like Dead Hard. They could give him Quick Revive to pick up teammates and himself off the ground quickly. They could do Stamina Up to make him run faster. You can make a lot of the Zombies perks work in Dead by Daylight. Obviously, you'd have to change them a bit to make them fit and not be overpowered, but they would work perfectly. Beyond that, Richtofen has a lot of skin potential. The other 3 members of Primus can be added as legendary skins and taken into the fog at the end of Tog der Toten when the universe comes to an end. The Ultimus and Victus crew could be skins as well. Unfortunately, the Mob of the Dead crew and other similar one-off crews probably wouldn't come to the game as they're celebrity characters based on the likeness of real people, but it would be cool to see them. And that about covers it from my interpretation of a potential COD Zombies chapter. Sadly, Activision would never strike up a deal like this, and if they did, it would probably be something with the modern Zombies games, which nobody really likes, and it'd just be very disappointing. But anyways, thanks for watching, and if you have anything else you'd like to add, drop a comment and I'll be sure to respond. See you later.